everyone for this session of the World Resources Forum 21. So this session is dedicated to the new circular economy standards from ISO for global alignment and practical implementation. So I am pleased to share with you and with the speakers a first view about what is going on at ISO level for this standard development. And after that, we will have a presentation from Lawrence Milay-Canals from UN Environmental Programme Experience to explain us the position of UNEP on circularity. So Hans Schröder and I will begin with the ISO work. We will have also a Q&A session, two Q&A sessions, the first one for the first part of this presentation and the second one dedicated to UNEP. So first, before going in deep into the topic, maybe we can just begin with an icebreaker and a question for you. So, which statement is not correct between the three you have on the slides? So maybe we can launch the poll, Sonia, if you like, and you will be able to answer.
Yeah, I think you can share it from your screen, Kathleen.
Okay. A few seconds. Okay, let me try again. And if it doesn't work, we will go on like this. Okay, I guess you can see the question. Good. So for the first question, just answer and tell us which statement to you is not correct to define what circular economy is. Okay, a few seconds more. And we have, yes, I see that you are answering also the tricky question, so no problem. We will go back to the answer after. Okay. I will share the result. You can see the result? Okay, good. Thank you. So for the first pool, which statement is not correct? You answer the second one, the second answer, and you're right. Most of you, yes, you're right. Because yes, circular economy is about contributing. About the contribution to the resource availability over time, for sure, because we know that resources are limited, so we have to better reuse, recover, recycling, remanufacture, and so on. And for this, the answer to circular economy is about producing more with less. No, we need to have a new behavior. We need to change our consumption mode, and we need to change our production mode. So that's why the answer 2 is not correct. And answer 3, circular economy, is about value sharing in an inclusive way along the value chain or value network. Yes, we will try to involve more collaboration between partners along the value chain to create new value networks to be able to answer not only to an environmental issue, but also to social issue. For the second question, regarding how much resources return from the take, produce, provide economy, all of you, yes, said, no, not all of you. Most of you said less than 10%. Less than 10%. Yes, less than 10%. Nobody said 20%. A few of you said 30 and fewer 50%. So what is the right answer? Unfortunately, the right answer is less than 10%. Less than 10%. That means that we are not able to make loops right now with our take, process, produce, and provide economy. So we are in a linear economy, and we have to push this cycle back because we have too much waste without any value sharing, without any value resource consideration. So yes, it's less than 10%, unfortunately, and we have to push this percentage. And the last question was regarding when the circular economy, the concept emerged. So most of you said yes, before 1970, and you're right. Let me check the answer. And the answer is not so clear, in fact, but yes, it's an old concept. In the 1976, European Commission began to work regarding how to think jobs for tomorrow and how to include loops within our our linear model, economic model. And after that, years after years, we think about the cradle-to-cradle concept. We think about how to use a more circular way of recovering resources and so on. And we think about the zero waste after that, to be able to focus on this kind of resource and to avoid waste by thinking about how to recover waste and to make a new resource from waste. And years after years, we saw that this concept really take place in our society. And maybe I can speak about a little bit about Ellen MacArthur Foundations, who was the first really to speak about that and to have a concept about that. And now in Europe, at least, European Commission have the Green Deal and really think to work on that and to push countries in Europe to work on that. But it's not the only one, Europe, to work on that. Other geographical areas from the world work already on that. And that's why at ISO level, so the International Standardization, the technical committee dedicated to circular economy, has been created 2 years ago. So the scope of this technical committee is to standardize the field of circular economy. And our job is to develop frameworks, guidance, tools to be able to push the implementation of circular economy within activities of all involved organizations, and by the end of the day, to maximize the contribution to sustainable development. That's why previously we were speaking about the social part of a circular economy, and it's not only economy, it's also environmental but social contribution to sustainable development. And we are working with at TC 323, we are working with a lot of different organizations that you can see on the screen. Around 80 countries are participating to the job, which is very good. And right now, our main issue, our main challenge, may I say, is to propose an answer to this environmental and social emergency, and to find a way to provide an alternative economic way to be able to push more recycling and so on within our value chain. That means that we have to promote a new mindset to be able to push the circular economy concept. And we have also at ISO level to push the circular economy for all organizations. That means private, public organization as far as possible. And we have to develop that not only for large companies, for sure, but also for small and medium enterprises from all geographies, because the challenge is for all of us. So it's not only a question of resource, it's not only a question of waste, it's a question of cooperation, and it's a question also of a long-term vision and not short-term as business as usual, may I say. In a nutshell, you can see our work program. So we have a package of different international standards under development. The first one regarding the terminology, principles, and framework to be able to give a common understanding of what circular economy is. The second one will be around how you push your linear business model to transform it into a circular one. And the third regarding how to measure circularity performance. And Hans Schröder here with us is leading this job around measuring and assessing circularity. And we also have different other standard under development. And maybe what I can say is that the World Resources Forum is also very involved within this standard regarding the secondary materials, principles, sustainability, and traceability requirements. So circular economy, we right now have defined that to be able to push this definition for all of people, and to have in mind that it deal with a life cycling perspective, relationship, and so on, to be able to have different behavior regarding our mode of consumption and production. So maybe I have to speed a little bit to be able to have time after that. But what we want to just focus here is regarding the first standard, the terminology, principles, and framework for implementation. So we have a set of definitions within this standard to define circular economy for sure, but also to define resource, to define waste, to define value networks, and so on. We would like to push also principles, the value creation, the value sharing, and principles around a resource to be able to get their availability, their traceability. And we would like to provide people a framework for implementation to be able that they can implement concept of circular economy operationally, pragmatically within their organization. And that's why we propose also areas of action to give examples of what circular economy could be. So this is the principle we have to show you that it's very linked between the economy, the society, and the environment. That's why we would like to push the sustainable development by thinking about circular economy. The second standard is regarding the business model. The business model right now, our business model for most of us are a linear one, and we have to think in a new way, in a new behavior to be able to push in production area some new business model to think more about how to recycle, how to reuse, how to use reverse logistics and so on, and also how to work together, how to be more collaborative, how to work with creating value network along the value chain to be able to have a win-win condition of work and to be able to push circular economy, especially for private industries. And we have one of the best, the main standard we have is regarding measuring circularity and assessing circularity. And this is the job of Hans. So Hans, I give you the floor.
Yes, Catherine, can you stop sharing? Then
yes.
I'll start sharing my
yes.
presentation. Then I can use the laser pointer.
Yes.
Let me see if I can do that. Yes. Okay.
We will be able to answer question with a Q&A session just after, because I see that someone raised his or her hand.
Okay. Okay. talking about measuring and assessing the circularity performance, we developed a framework which is in fact quite simple, because it's consists of 4 steps. So it's a stepwise approach with iteration. It is not a plan, do, check, act approach. So you are not receiving another management system. You can link this to your existing management system approach. And it's about goal and scope, and then circularity measurement and data acquisition, which are very well aligned, and then circularity assessment. So what we try to feed back to the management system is the circularity performance and impacts, also impacts on social, environmental, and economic issues. So we feed in requirements and needs, which will come from the organization. It can be a circularity strategy, an economic system in focus, and also different levels. I'll explain that later to you. It can come from, we can also have complementary methods, which help us in assessing also the impacts of social, environmental, and economic issues. Let me go to the next slide. What we did in 2020, we did a global investigation of all the circularity indicator systems that are already out there. And as you can see, there are more than 1,400 sub-indicators and many categories which are being used in all these indicator systems. What we noticed from the indicator systems is that they are measuring on different categories like waste and emissions, material and product outflows, material inflows, energy, electricity, and water. And you can see beyond every category examples of indicators which are being used. However, as Catherine explained, we are also developing as a definition and terminology and principles on circular economy. And that means that we're talking about adding resource value, retaining resource value, and regenerating resource value, and systemically maintain a circular flow while contributing to sustainable development. So we also have to align the measurement to the purposes, to the objectives of the circular economy. So this is another dimension. What we are trying to develop at the moment is to combine what's happening in real practice and to align with the objectives and the definition of circular economy. So we're talking about systemically maintain circular flow, then adding, retaining, and regenerating resource value, and then all the different indicators which can help to achieve these objectives of circular economy. So we are developing a taxonomy classification to measure and also to assess the circularity performance and impacts on social, environmental, and economic issues. One thing we would like to add is that we are measuring at different levels. So we are measuring from product level, organizational level, to inter-organizational level, and even at regional level. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development is using the terms macro, meso, micro, and nano, but we decided to use a little bit different wording. So what we try to measure is a system in focus. So it can be on an organizational level or between multiple organizations or within a specific sector. And this is all being included in guidance and different examples in the standard itself. When we were talking about social, environmental, and economic aspects, we also try to contribute to sustainable development and to maximize the contribution. And what we've noticed is that SDG 12 and SDG 9 are, from a circular economy perspective, in the center. And we can contribute to 8 other SDGs when we are transforming from linear to a circular economy. So, and what we did is we explained that different SDG targets and SDG key performance indicators can be aligned to circular economy indicators. So we can have a very positive impact on several, and we have 8 SDGs on other SDGs when we start working on the circular economy. Okay, that's it for the moment.
Yes, thank you.
Catherine?
Maybe just another
the chat.
information.
Oh.
Yes, I was on the chat, but yes, something, some additional information regarding the publication of the standards, as I said within the chat. So most of our international standards, we will publish them by mid of 2023. That means in 1 year and a half. But you know, it's a big job, big challenge with all the countries around the table. Next slide. Yes, just to give you an information. Next slide, please. You can. Yes, just to give you a view regarding how it's not so easy to have a consensus on that. It's because at ISO level, you have people representing their countries. So as you saw, we have more than 80 countries around the table. So we have to get the consensus. We have to work together to be able to publish something the right quality and for all to understand what circular economy is. So, and that's why that's why it's not so easy, and that's why it takes some time to publish that. Thank you, Hans. So that's all. So maybe we have a few minutes for question. We have already question within the chat, so I have already answered, but we have a question regarding ISO, how ISO standards correlate or fit with the framework, European framework. So ISO standards are not regulatory text, so you can take them if you want within your own organization. And what I am trying to do right now is to speak with at European level and standardization to be able to find a way to better fit together. So feel free to ask your question. You can raise your hand if you like, or write your question within the chat as you like. We have a few minutes to answer a question. Thank you, Hans.
Yes, maybe good to clarify that within the European Union, the corporate sustainability reporting directive is being developed, and there are many indicators also connected to the circular economy objective, one of the 6 objectives of the European Union Green Deal. And we are having directly contact with the organization who is advising the structure and the indicators on circular economy, and they are using already the circularity indicator categories we have defined at the moment in ISO 59020. So there is alignment already, and we will have further contact in this year.
Thank you, Hans. The other question is for you. What are the suggested impact assessment methods suggested for the CE assessment step? Thanks.
Yeah, that's thank you for the question. I left out the slide which I normally present. It's about complementary methods, and that's how we call it, because what we want to do is we want to align with existing standards, for example, from ISO, to avoid duplication. That means that we are using, we are building bridges, for example, to life cycle assessment standards from ISO in the 14,000 series, to social life cycle assessment of the United Nations, and material flow analysis and life cycle costing. So we are building bridges to existing, we call them complementary methods. And these will help us in assessing also the social, environmental, and economic aspects.
Yes, thank you. We have another question. If you want to be involved within the ISO level, you just have to contact your national standardization body. So for Kenya, you have the link on the slide right now on the screen, just to identify your national standardization body, get contact with them, and after that, yes, you will be you can be part of the job. Will this standard be applicable to small and medium enterprises or just to large organizations? Good question. What we would like to do is to, for all, private organization, public organization, small, medium, and large organizations. So it's not an easy job, but our challenge is to produce some text which will be implemented within all organizations. But maybe for small organization, or maybe for specific areas of the world, we will need some specific text. I don't know up to now. It's but up to now we have this text, and in our mind we write that to be implemented by all. Another question, what the relation between circular economy and ISO 14015, and also do you work with SBTN? Okay, could you remind me what is 14015, or maybe Hans, you know that, because it's on environmental management, so for
Yes.
sure.
Yes, I was already typing an answer in the chat.
Okay.
that we have a liaison with the ISO Technical
Yes.
Committee 207, which is dealing with all the environmental standards, and 14,015 is also included. So we try to align to these standards, and we try to build bridges, but we try to avoid duplication, because
Yes.
otherwise we can include all the ISO standards from the 14,000 series. And so we really, we are aligning this within ISO.
Yes, and may I remind that circular economy is not just a question of environment, but more large. And SBT, you mean Science-Based Target Initiative, I guess, regarding the neutrality. So it's also including in other ISO of 14 series. So yes, we try to get the link. Please, could you tell us a little bit more about the social indicators? Very good question. Not so easy one, but yes, we are trying to integrate social part within the text, and not only for the assessment, but for all other standards under development. And yes, we are trying to improve the text with this part of social. Are these new ISO standards using the high-level structure such as ISO 14021, 50, blah, 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 45, etc.? I don't know yet, or maybe Hans, you can answer. But
yeah, well, the question is a very valid question, because we are discussing within our technical committee. Suppose we will develop management system standards, then of course we will use this structure. But at the moment we are only producing standards which are providing guidance and frameworks. Yeah. And so we are not developing management system standards. Otherwise we will definitely align, for sure. So that will be maybe new standards in the near future. Because we just started, Katrien?
Yes, we just started 2 years ago, and up to now we are developing some text in parallel, which is not an easy task. So and after we will be able to think about maybe management system standard, maybe specific text for small businesses. I don't know, let's say, but up to now we try to provide, as I said, this package, this simple package to facilitate implementation, to facilitate dialogue, and so on. I take one question more, and after that I will take the chat and answer the all question. But one question more. So who is the TC contact for the standard in Nigeria? Please get to the ISO platform, and you will have your contact in Nigeria. And if there is any trouble for that, do not hesitate to send me an email. Science-based target network, yes, thank you, Chris. But which link with the science-based target initiative I guess. Okay, so we have to go on with the other presentation, and if we have time, we'll maybe come back to the question. So I am pleased to welcome Lawrence here from UNEP, and he will share with us the experience from UNEP about circularity. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And obviously, thank you, the organizers, Catherine, Hans, and Sonia, for inviting me to present on UNEP's experience in circularity and to provide some examples of implementation around the world. I lead the work on life cycle approaches and life cycle assessment in UNEP, which includes the life cycle initiative. So very, very briefly, because we don't have much time, but just to introduce that the Life Cycle Initiative was launched almost 20 years ago. We're turning 20 next year. And it was launched by UNEP with many other partners as a multi-stakeholder partnership to enable the use of life cycle approaches in supporting public and private decision-making. Where's just a quick big thank you to all the funding partners of the Life Cycle Initiative who make it possible for our contribution to this debate. But let's jump straight into the debate and the substance. We know that sustainable consumption and production is probably the ultimate transversal issue in the Sustainable Development Goals. There are more than 50 of the 169 SDG targets which depend on a shift to sustainable consumption and production patterns, or SCP patterns. And we saw already in the previous presentation very clearly that the circular economy is linked through a sustainable consumption and production to many of the Sustainable Development Goals. I actually didn't check whether we have all kind of the same goals here, but certainly a big number of goals depend on this sustainable consumption and production, to which circularity helps us to achieve. Because circularity, as we've seen, or the circular economy, if you want, pushes us to rethink the economy with a full life cycle perspective. So the value chain actors work in synchrony in order to disconnecting the economic activity, the results of the economic activity from the resource use and environmental impacts. And obviously considering not only environmental issues, but also social and economic implications, as we've seen. So circularity brings all of these things together. And in the UNEP circularity platform that you see towards the left of your screens, we distinguish and showcase in very practical terms the 9 R's in this hierarchy towards circularity to transform the linear take, make, waste linear model, as we call it. So here, as you can see, I mean, we distinguish kind of the processes, the circular economy strategies in the shorter loop, where a product remains close to the user and its function. So we have more kind of a client or user choices. We then look at this medium loop where products are upgraded and producers are involved again. So this is not, in this medium loop, it's not just about the user. We need the producers again to come into play. And finally, along the loop, where the products lose their original function, and essentially we're ensuring that the material resources are kept in the economy. So essentially recycling, but also repurposing, perhaps. Anyway, I encourage you to look at the platform and see what comes. But all of these strategies, of course, are kind of in relation or as a transformation from the traditional linear system, which we see in this kind of dashed line in the outer border. So why we need to do this seems obvious, and we all hear the messages on how we're running in overdrive, and we've been surpassing all the planetary boundaries. So in this sense, measuring our progress is essential. I mean, here in this slide, we see the measure in terms of the material footprint and the amount of resources that we're using, but we have many more, as Hans was mentioning. So having indicators and having a database that allows us to measure these indicators and to monitor them is essential. And UNEP is the custodian of several of the Sustainable Development Goals indicators that are relevant from a circular economy point of view, both, for instance, from a resource consumption, where we look at indicators, indicators 8.4.2 and 12.2.2, on resource consumption, actually, and the indicators as well on material footprint, 8.4.1 and 12.2.1, if I get them right. But we also have indicators on recycling rate related to the SDG 12.5.1. So for some of these indicators, we also provide resources from UNEP for their calculation. And in that sense, the IRP, the International Resource Panel Global Materials Flows database, offers the official data source for reporting on the SDG targets that I just mentioned. So for the SDG 8 and 12, and these indicators that you see in the screens. But in addition to supporting the SDGs, the database, this Global Material Flows database, supports as well the Sustainable Consumption and Production Hotspot analysis tool. I will go into it in a second, but also the Material Flows Net from which is hosted by the University of Vienna. And it obviously also offers or supports a lot of research pieces from the IRP, like the Global Resources Outlook, which was first published in 2019. The next edition will appear in 2023, but also fact sheet series on natural resource use in several countries, etc. So as mentioned, one important application of the Material Flows database is the Sustainable Consumption and Production Hotspots analysis tool, the SCP-HAT, as we call it, which was built by the University of Vienna and the CSIRO in Australia, under the auspices of the UNEP Secretariats for the One Planet Network, the Life Cycle Initiative, and the International Resource Panel. You can actually hear more detail about this tool in a following session this afternoon. I think it's session 2D. So in very, very short, because we will not have the time, the SCP-HAT provides evidence-based analysis of the high impact areas and sectors within national economies. And these also then offer the high impact opportunities that can inform the design and the implementation of national science-based SCP strategies, so strategies for sustainable consumption and production. And for instance, we've seen, for instance, already that the United Nations Development Programme, the UNDP, in their Climate Promise project, they use the SCP-HAT in order to support countries enhancing their nationally determined contributions, the NDCs. In this slide, we see the results that were extracted from the SCP-HAT in order to enhance the NDC of Vanuatu. What we see in this slide is really the hotspots, apologies, that were detected by the SCP-HAT, which guide into those sectors of the economy where it is most effective to focus attention, for instance, on circular economy strategies that can support as well in the NDCs. And I would like also to note that the NDC for the Gambia, which you may know that it's the only country rated as by the Climate Action Tracker as 1.5 degree Paris Agreement compatible. So that's the only country that gets into that category. And their NDC was also supported by the analysis of the SCP-HAT with similar data. And before closing, I wanted to mention just some of the work in the plastic sector, which many have branded as probably one of the most linear sectors. And as you can see in the slide, when we talk about the plastic life cycle, there's actually not much of a cycle going on. And it's a rather linear system where we see that it's mainly taking resources from nature, from crude oil and gas, and disposing of them with very, very little being cycled back. The figure shows the work that Roland Geyer's team did on quantifying the amounts, the flows of plastic through history. And we see, well, how a lot of the plastic is simply taken and then dispersed into the environment or ending up in landfills. So looking at the figure, we could already start identifying some of the key indicators that we want to see changing in our progress to circularity. And here are some examples. We've been making some progress towards achieving these well, agreed goals on making plastics economy more circular with clear quantitative indicators. And the ones shown here are obviously not exhaustive, but measure the progress in some of what we identify as the key levers across the life cycle of plastics. And actually, we have already made significant progress in both defining some of these indicators, like effective recycling rates or reduction of on virgin plastic production and consumption, in the context of the New Plastics Economy Global Commitment, which is led by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in collaboration with UNEP. This progress on all of these indicators will be announced next month, actually, in the third annual report that we'll be publishing on the global commitment. So just encouraging you to watch the space. And as I'm over time already, I just wanted to insist with these concluding remarks that we need a significant transformation of our economy into one that uses the resources in a more efficient way and that enhances the livelihoods of all the stakeholders involved. This is way beyond the recycling processes, as we've seen as well in the previous presentation. It really needs new inclusive business models that work with nature and that consider as well the social implications. Also, I would like to highlight that that life cycle assessment is an indispensable tool to assess holistically the overall impacts of circular economy strategies. And finally, and maybe this is a bit provocative, but just for the sake of argumentation, we need to agree on several indicators, and we've seen the many indicators that are being considered by ISO, and I think that's extremely necessary. But at the same time, if I had to place my bets, if I have to pick one indicator for a circular economy, I would say that the use of virgin resources is probably the best single indicator if we had to pick one, because if we don't see that the consumption of virgin resources is going down, then we're definitely not doing our job with the circular economy. But I'll leave you with this. Thank you so much. And I hope there might be still time for questions, but I'll leave that up to Catherine. Thanks
yes, thank you very much, Laurence, and a very nice indicator at the end of the day to see if really we try to tackle this resource depletion. So thank you. Do you have any question? We have a few minutes for question. I check the chat. Okay, so before question, maybe I am very pleased to say that UNEP will be part of the ISO work because we are in liaison to do the work. Okay, yes, the first question. Are you linking the life cycle assessment of or SCP with the ISO standard? Good question.
Very good question indeed. I think, well, the ISO standard is still under development, so it would be really nice to see how it can link. But one thing I really need to insist is that the SCP HAT works at the very macro level. So the indicators we have there are for the national economy as a whole. Although, of course, we can dig down, for instance, on indicators like resource consumption in specific sectors and subsectors. So very much, I mean, there is, for instance, not one indicator in the SCP HAT that tells you this is your level of circularity, because that indicator has not been agreed yet. But we're very much hoping that, you know, at the macro level, but that's what the SCP HAT is useful for, at the national economy level and looking at the different sectors' contribution, I would very much hope that in the future, whenever an indicator is defined or a set of indicators are defined for circularity, that they can also be adapted in the SCP HAT. At the moment, it provides indicators like material footprint of nations and sectors, and that's already a contribution, but probably not aligned because, well, we're still waiting for ISO to to have it.
Well, Laurent, we try to align the indicators on the different levels, from country level to value network, organization, and product. We try to align the indicators and make them scalable so that there's some kind of consistency between the 4 levels. And so it's very good to have a look at the indicators which SCP HAT is using. So you're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you.
Another question, is there space for having single-use products and still developing and implementing circular economy?
I love that question. if I can jump in, because actually that's one of the areas where we're using life cycle assessment to compare, I mean, particularly in the area of plastics. So we've been comparing life cycle assessment studies that compare single-use plastic products with their alternatives. And that's a way actually of assessing different alternatives for circular economy and looking, for instance, at reusable products. My short answer to that would be probably no, but of course it's difficult to be categorical. But certainly one of the things we identify is that single-use products, regardless of their material, are a big problem. There may be some applications where we need a product to be used one single time, but that's not the majority as we have today. So we have to move much more towards beyond disposability, towards a reuse economy. That will certainly take us closer to having a circular economy.
Thank you. Any other question? We have 2-3 minutes left. Okay, if not, do you want to add something, Lawrence or Hans?
I mean, I think, well, again, thank you very much for the for the presentation. I think advancing and I think the work of ISO in bringing together all the countries, it's a painful process. It's painful to get the consensus, but I think it's essential in order to ensure that we advance on all of this together. This is also one of the important elements of the 2030 agenda is to leave no one behind. So I think we definitely need to work to join hands and advance in the definitions, in the agreement on how we measure things, because otherwise we're not going to advance so much.
Thanks.
And Laurent, what I've noticed in your presentation, you are focusing on SDG 9. However, SDG 12. However, SDG 9, when we're talking about buildings and infrastructure, is having a huge impact on the circular economy. So for us, 12 and 9 are both central. So not only 12, not only the consumption, but also infrastructure, building, roads, bridges, everything.
You're totally correct. And actually, one of the examples I failed to mention because there was no time, but it's exactly one resource piece that the International Resource Panel produced on circular economy approaches in the buildings and construction sector. Definitely, this is one of the biggest opportunities to introduce circular economy with knock-on effects and positive effects as well on climate change.
Yes.
So totally agree. Yes, maybe that's one thing to update in the slide. So thank you for that, Hans.
Last question coming from Sonia. Does ISO foresee pilots before finalizing the standards? It's not in the process of the ISO to test and to make some pilot, but the standards are published for 5 years, sorry, and after that there is a revision process. So we will be able to put on the table some texts and to use them, to make some feedback experience, and after that to be able to upgrade them and to produce something else. So up to now, but it's a very good question, because this question has been raised in the working group 1, the group who is dealing with the terminology, with the principles, and how to implement circular economy. So I keep this idea and to share that with people around the ISO, because it's a very good idea. Okay, so I guess it's time. So I will close the session. Thank you very much, Hans. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much, Sonia. And I guess that the presentation will be available for you as well as the recording. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody, Lawrence and Hans. I think I can record and download it in my computer and will share the recording with you.
Okay,
great.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sonia. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks,
Bye.
Hans. That was great.
Bye-bye.
Take care.